Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Crosse Commission Podcast. If you are watching this on video, which we'll be uploading to YouTube, you will be seeing my face. And you might be wondering, well, hang on a minute. Why do I only see Jake's face? And then if you're listening to this through audio, through podcast form, you might be wondering, we're 30 seconds in. Why has Jake not introduced anybody else? These are good questions. I am going solo this evening. This will be I think only the second ever edition of the Crosse Commission Podcast that is a one-man admission. The other one I think was also me. I think I did it. That was also a one-man solo journey by myself about like 4 years ago or so. Kind of like that idea that I've had two of these. It's pretty cool. Nothing to fret. Safe is off this week. He took the evening off for this one, and he's visiting his mom this weekend. So it should be me and Ryan. We should still be good to go for the Power Hour this weekend. Probably a little later Power Hour with Maryland, Virginia, Klockner facing off at about 4 p.m. Eastern. So our kind of early evening Power Hour is about 5. Probably going to have to push back, maybe 6:30, 7 or so. So a bit of a later Power Hour this Saturday. But we should still be live on YouTube, me and Ryan. But Safe's all good, but it is just me. Thought, I can knock one of these out, figure. But bear with me as I do a solo. When I look at this, look at the StreamYard, and I just see my face. It seems, knock one of these out. The show will go on. And excited to talk some lacrosse here. Because we got a good slate of games. Kind of early rivalry weekend. Cornell-Princeton, as we kind of talked about on Saturday during the Power Hour. They moved this game up from the end of the year. Now it takes place in mid-March. Lines up with Maryland, Virginia. That, of course, a big rivalry in and of itself. And some other intriguing games that will take place as we're kind of like right in that sort of middle area between conference play beginning in some leagues. Patriot League's thinking week 3. The Ivy League, because we're talking about, obviously, they're taking off this weekend with conference play. The Big Ten, they'll begin next week. I think the ACC as well. So this is sort of kind of last chance saloon in some cases for some big non-conference wins for some teams, and in other leagues it's really kicking off. We're kind of at a sort of crucial intersection of the season right about here at this point. So I'm excited for us to get it away here, folks. And let's do this thing on this my solo stream here, podcast for this evening. Do it radio style. All right. First, kind of start out with some poll that we will take a look at. Our top 20 poll that we released as I try and share my screen for, let me see if I can get, no, that's not what I want. This is obviously a very riveting radio for everyone. There we go. So for video watchers, this is I'll bend the screen now, but for audio, I'll share it out. Our top 20 poll came out this week. Maryland's still number 1. Princeton has risen to number 2 after some of the big results that we saw, most notably Notre Dame. 2 losses in a row for the first time since 2022 season to Ohio State. North Carolina's at 3, so Princeton rose to 2 because of those results. North Carolina at 3, Penn State at 4. That was the other second big result was Cornell falling to Penn State. That crazy Penn State comeback from 4 goes down with about 2 minutes left. So that saw Penn State climb up to number 4. It saw Cornell drop into a tie for 6th along with Duke. Army is now at 5th. The Black Knights were 7th in last week's poll. They're the team that's kind of just hanging around. They're not the toughest out of conference schedule for Army this season. So up to this point, they have North Carolina here coming up pretty soon. That should be a very exciting game. A big chance for Army. Last year, obviously, they beat North Carolina, and it felt like Army was just in a great position with the games that they had. With the teams to beat, they beat Syracuse and North Carolina for the NCAA tournament. And then, of course, they took multiple hits in Patriot League play. And then they promptly also lost the Patriot League tournament. So that meant they missed the NCAA tournament after getting to number 1 in the country. But if Army can win that game against North Carolina, not to do too much in the bracketology here, Army can win that game against North Carolina, considering kind of the state of where the everything else is. I think they'll have a decent potential. They've put themselves in a good position, provided they don't do what else they did after that and lose multiple games in Patriot League play. I think 1 loss probably be maybe the maximum they could take, but they look pretty strong right now. The Black Knights, so they're at 5th. As mentioned, Cornell and Duke in a tie at 6th. Ohio State's at 8. Big jump for the Buckeyes. I think this is the first time they've been in the top 10 since early in the 2023 season. After they, obviously started there around the top 10 in 2023. After they made the tournament in 2022, fell from there pretty quickly, and then haven't really been in the business end of the poll since then. But we talked about just a fantastic win for Ohio State, a grown adult win, type they haven't had in a while. They moved up in top 10. Notre Dame at 9. They fell the hardest in our poll compared to the others. Still hung around the top 10. Still getting a lot of respect for what they've done. The Fighting Irish, and you look at their losses. Kind of mentioned like they're sort of like Maryland around 2016, 2017, 2018. Their losses are all by 1 goal that they're taking last year. Look at this year. It's still a good Notre Dame team for sure. And it takes a lot to beat them, even on their off days. So we'll see how the Fighting Irish get back after against Michigan this weekend. Harvard at 10. Crimson are in our top 10. See the win over Syracuse. Got a win over Michigan this weekend as well. It'll be interesting to see them start Ivy League play. Cuse at 11. Big win for the Orange at the Dome. They were kind of looking for that statement win. They got it over Johns Hopkins with a comeback there early in the 4th quarter. Hopkins falls to 12. Big hit for the Blue Jays. They were ranked 6th. So they fell 6 spots after that loss to Syracuse. Georgetown at 13. They kind of fell just sort of by the way the poll kind of shook out. Georgetown hasn't had a lot of big wins. No one's really had big wins, as we kind of been talking about. But other teams kind of accumulated some more impactful wins. That kind of went. Georgetown fell, especially also because they lost quite heftily to Hopkins at Homewood. Colgate's at 14, Richmond 15, Fairfield, one of the 3 undefeateds left alongside Maryland Army. I think you have Fairfield there as well. So they're at 16. Be interesting to see if the stacks continue to move up. Virginia back in our poll at 17, ahead of a big game for the Cavs this weekend. Klockner against Maryland. UMass at 18, Penn's back at 19 as well, and St. Joe's. Kind of some of the changes the poll we haven't seen. I remember I kind of campaigned earlier in the year. I wanted to see some less hurting in the poll. I think we're definitely starting to see, which I'm excited. Look, it feels like a real poll again, as opposed to the last couple of years where you could pick out kind of your 3, Notre Dame, Notre Dame, Virginia, and Duke, some order. Then you had Maryland, obviously, in there, and then Penn State and Hopkins out of the Big Ten. Probably throw Cornell in there from the Ivy League, maybe Army. It feels like a tough kind of endeavor to put this together. I think it's interesting because it shows how different people try and do their poll. There's different thought processes behind it. We had one reader, I think Patrick on Twitter, kind of asked, like, what happens if Maryland loses? Does Princeton just become number 1, even if they had lost, Maryland beat Princeton? And it was, I think it depends on when the loss from Maryland happens. If it happens this weekend and Princeton wins, I think it's an interesting discussion. I think it probably goes to the nature of the two teams' results. If Maryland takes a significant loss to Virginia and Princeton has a significant win over Cornell, I think Princeton's resume would be pretty hefty. And I think also just you could kind of maybe weigh the power ranking element of it. Some folks just do pure power ranking. They kind of just go off results at the most recent week, and that's how they like to do it. And their poll is more volatile. Other folks kind of do it more resume based. They really want to look at just wins and losses. And so it's going to be less volatile because you're looking at the full body work. I always like to say, and this kind of means that, my poll is kind of my poll specifically is, so you'll see different result. You'll see different things within it. I want it to be an accurate reflection of how it looks, what I think the college lacrosse landscape is right now. And so what's the most accurate reflection of the teams who have done the most and also the teams who are looking the best? I don't want it to be pure power ranking because I think pure power ranking might ding Notre Dame for losing 2 straight games, but I've also seen the way Notre Dame played against Ohio State and Maryland, and I think that Notre Dame team is still really good. And so I'm not going to fully drop Notre Dame out of the top 10. But on the flip side, Notre Dame was ranked 8th in the coaches poll, and they're 6th in the 7th in the media poll, compared to 9th, for us. I do think there's quite a bit of benefit of the doubt there that they're getting, maybe less so for us. I think it's fair to note, like, this is a new season and it's a new team, and what Ohio State's done so far, beating Notre Dame on their own field and blowing out Virginia the way they did. I mean, obviously, Ohio State took the loss to Utah early on. That was week 1. Ohio State went on the road. I think Ohio State, I need to see them go on the road and win a game. They did that, and they beat Virginia as well, and they beat Notre Dame head-to-head. I think what Ohio State's done in 2025 is more impressive so far than what Notre Dame's done. And Ohio State beat Notre Dame. And for me, that means Ohio State should be ranked above Notre Dame. We're a month and a half into the season now. Obviously, Notre Dame, if you're asking me, who do I have more trust over the long haul? Yeah, I'm going to pick Notre Dame. They're the 2-time defending national champions. Their program, kind of stature and history suggests they should have more. You should have more trust in them maybe than what Ohio State's done recently. But at the end of the day, I got to take into account what Ohio State's done in this season in 2025. And so that's why, I wanted to rank the Buckeyes over, that important to rank the Buckeyes over the Fighting Irish. Similar with Harvard over Syracuse. Harvard went into the Dome and beat Syracuse. Harvard got a win over Michigan at home. I'm on the flip side of that, though, and I do think you're seeing some of this in other polls. Like, I have to kind of take into account some of what I've seen from Harvard. There was that Colgate game. There's games where their defense has looked really shaky, and I'm not fully sold yet. And that's kind of some of my eye test, just some of the stats, and that is going to make me still kind of put them behind a team like a Notre Dame, or maybe a team behind an Ohio State. So that's just it's just kind of weighing these different things. If you wanted to go purely off resume, you could argue Princeton might have the best resume, but you got to take this where you can take into account head-to-head. And again, I always say, I think head-to-head matters less and less as the season goes on. So if Maryland and Princeton stay 1-2 for a while, for another 3 weeks, and Maryland takes a loss, I think it probably is pretty fair for Princeton to maybe move above them. I think that's fine. That it's been a while since that game. it's worth knowing, like, the poll is not the NCAA tournament seeding. Maryland beating Princeton the way they did on the road is going to come into account when they seed these teams for the NCAA tournament. If where these two teams are on the line, if it feels likely these two teams, whether it's 1 and 2 or we'll see, but it feels likely these two teams will be in contention somewhere next to each other for seeding in the NCAA tournament. Maybe not. Maybe the teams' fortunes will change at some point, but that result will, if they are next to each other in contention for seed, that result will come into play. It might not be the deciding factor. Maybe their resumes distinguish and separate from each other, in which case it's a factor. But if their resumes are distinct enough, head-to-head can be a factor. But if they're close enough, then Maryland's win over Princeton will be something that could definitely be a separating thing. But that game did happen in February, and it can't be kind of the only thing you hold on to. But yeah, it's something worth considering. Other things to kind of pull that Ohio State. Something I was kind of nobody know of. Harvard, Harvard's 13th. We have them in 10th. We're a little higher on North Carolina. Other than that, Denver's still hanging on 20th in the media poll. That was about it. As far as the poll is considered, we had a question that I will field here before we can get to these games. It was from our good friend Mark Hart at Fieldy Stick. Asked if you guys, guy in this case, haven't sat down to record this week's pod yet. I have a request. Mid-March vibe check these 5 teams for me: Duke, Johns Hopkins, Ohio State, Harvard, Penn. Disclaimer, these 5 teams were chosen totally at random with no rhyme or reason. That came with a wink at the end, so I'm assuming this is there is a rhyme or reason for this, potentially maybe resume, kind of things like things of that nature. I'm intrigued by this, so I'm going to take this on. Mid-March vibe check for these 5 teams. Duke, I'm going to say, I think Duke's vibes are positive right now. I think clearly internally Duke's vibes are good. I think Dino seems like he really enjoys coaching this team. They seem to be a team that the chemistry, the cohesion, they seem to really love playing with one another. Seems to be a good group dynamic there. It's an interesting team to watch, Duke. You see them celebrate. I remember like that Princeton game, the way they were celebrating goals. It was just a different energy with Duke. Usually you're used to Duke teams more subdued, more kind of make fun of this or something business-like. This is more of a Duke, more energy you see out of this Duke team. They were celebrating goals more, kind of extroverted. I think that's kind of an indication of the team that they think they have to be. This is a Duke team that's going to work really hard. I think you got the idea of that. They're going to leave it all out there. It's not a Duke team that's as talented as the teams we've seen in the past, at least in terms of the names. There's definitely still talent here on this Duke roster. Like defensively, I think they've shown there's some really good obvious talent up to this point. Matt Christmas, the long pole, is that a 5-star. I think he was the top ranked long stick midi in his class. I mean, he's shown it so far with what he can do, pushing transition, scoring goals. Some known guys on the offensive side: Eric Molliver, transfer coming from Maryland; Andrew McAdory, Ben Johnson, Max Sloat. Those guys were kind of big names in their high school class who've had some productive starts so far. So I mean, it's a talented squad. I mean, there's no question on that end of things. I don't think it should be kind of undersold. But it's not the sort of super team, for lack of a better term, that we've seen. I think you definitely see a lot of effort out of them, and I think that's what you're going to get. I don't think you're going to see, like right now they're up against Providence, midweek game. Because the most recent score I saw is 8-3. I think any games we've seen for them that have been kind of close, I think might be indications maybe of just the team that they have, which in that case, maybe you can point to maybe concerns about the roster overall. I don't think there's questions about them. Like we've seen with Duke in the past couple of years, where it feels like the effort level vacillates competition wise. There'd be games where they play ACC, you get an ACC game, big ACC game, and they'd come out and they look great. And it's like, wow, this is the Duke team we expect to see. This is the Duke team we think is a national champion contender. And then you'd get games from them midweek, or they maybe play Loyola, and it'd be like, what the heck is this? Like, what's happening here? So I don't think we're gonna get that with this Duke team. So I think internally their vibes are good. Externally, this Richmond game, I'm really intrigued. I think it's going to give us more of a good indication about where Duke is at. Their stat profile looks excellent, just statistically as far as like where they are at. Raw offensive efficiency, they rank 6th in the country. Raw defensive efficiency, they rank 23rd. Face-off, they rank 23rd as well. Goalkeeping play is a little bit of a more interesting one. Jamison had a really good start to the year, but he's kind of been a bit more up and down of late. They're 44th, little sub 50% save percentage, so maybe the goalie competition could be pried back open. We'll have to wait and see. And then if you go to the adjusted ranks, they are 6th in offense. They are 17th in defense. They rank 21st in face-off. So like the stat profile looks really good. Check on that offense side of the ball. The eye test is a little bit different. The offense has had some moments. Like the Princeton game we saw, like they looked very good. They also had like a 15-minute plus scoring drought within that game. They've had games against kind of Jacksonville, St. Joe's, where the offense has struggled a bit more. So it's hard to kind of tell which is it. This is a team that's ranked within that Penn game is a good example. Again, like the first half, that offense really struggled. In the second half, it blew up. Which is it? This is a team that's ranked in the top 10. They have one top 20 win. At the moment, it's over a Penn team that I don't know. You know, I personally don't have Penn ranked in my top 20. And I was someone who was very high on Penn going into the season. Penn's offense for me right now is just, I don't know. We'll get to Penn's on this list. But so that might, give you an indication. But of how I approach it. But I think internally Duke's vibes are good. I think after this week will be interesting kind of check in with that. I think if they win, I think they'll be in a very good spot, because they'll kind of sort of, even if out of conference they didn't get like they didn't stack up a lot of big wins. Going into ACC play, their win-loss record will look good. I think the stat profile will look a little more, there'll be more legitimacy to it based on, I think Richmond's a good team and they win that. If they lose, I think it'll feel a little bit more, maybe that's more inflated by some of the weaker teams they've played on the schedule. And that non-con slate looks a little bit more iffy, considering some of the lack of big games they were going to get. And then another team, like they have Denver later on, but what that game's providing for them is kind of more up in the air. But I think right now it's pretty good. Johns Hopkins. I think Johns Hopkins, I would say kind of cautious. I think they're the case, a lot of the teams right now, it feels like it's one sort of game that's kind of, if you win it, they feel really good going into conference play. And if you lose it, it seems to feel more uncertain. As we talked about, I think it's a case of, because a lot of these teams just don't really have a lot out of non-con play to really hang their hat on right now. It feels like if you can get one kind of big win, you feel really great about yourself, and you feel like you're set up well going into conference play. And if you don't have that, you're feeling a bit more uneasy. Um, I think Hopkins is a bit kind of cautious. I think there's things to be pleased about with this team. Overall, like not beating themselves. I don't think they really beat themselves to a degree against Cuse. I think the lots of face-offs in the second half, which again is kind of a bit of a bummer, I would say, because that had been a real strength of the team. They started so well at the dot, Logan Callahan did, but John Mullen made the adjustments and he won. It felt like the defense wore down. The hidden ball trick did seem to be a real swing in terms of energy and juice, and Hopkins did respond to it, but it did feel like Cuse after that jolted Cuse to a big degree, and it seemed to energize the crowd and the Cuse bench in a game where Hopkins had the pace the game at where they wanted it. And especially this summer because Hopkins played it right, everybody except for Luke Stout. So definitely not what you want there. They're doing what I think you would want this group to do overall. Like they do a lot of little things really well. But I think there are questions about now you have the goalie question with Stout. He's started to really struggle. Is the goalie change potentially in order? I mean, that's a crazy question. Look, we were really high on Luke Stout, I mean, particularly after how he started, but he hasn't been as good. And I do think some of this is their defense. I'm giving up a lot of shots, kind of time and shots kind of from distance, 10-yard shots, the over sliding. This is like 3 weeks in a row now where like their defense has come out and created offense, like we talked about. Sliding to guys who don't need slides. This is their style of offense. They're aggressive. They double team quickly, but sliding to midfielders who just don't need slides and creating offense, and that's giving tough shots for Stout. But when you're getting 30% save percentage games more routinely now, and then you have that hidden ball trick that you're not getting a lot of saves that you need. That's what you need your goalie. You need your goalie to be like, man, we needed that one. So that's a question. Russell Melendez's status. I do think if Melendez comes back soon, the positive is you have Charlie Eiler, who's emerged offensively. And that means if you put Melendez back there with Eiler on attack, now opponents can't. What opponents were doing was they were double polling the Hopkins midfield, which really hurt Brooks English, his ability to initiate from the midfield. Now, if you double poll the Hopkins, when you have to put the extra pole down there at the, you have to pull Charlie Eiler as well. Somebody at that Hopkins midfield, be it Brooks English or Dylan Bauer, is going to get a shorty, and that's really going to open up that offense. And that offense is already playing really well. That offense, honestly, in some ways, I think, been the strength of the team. But they're already going to really open up. I think that's going to help them a lot. I think they're going to need to figure out something on this defensive end, be it the shorties or the goalie situation. It feels like I don't think their shorties are as strong. Like this is how they play, but I don't think their shorties are as strong defensively. And I don't know if they trust them as much, and that's part of the oversliding potential. I mean, that's just how they play, but it's also creating a situation where you have a goalie that I don't know if you can trust to save some of these shots that you're giving up is now being put in this position. So I think they need to figure out something with this defense. And it's not like the defense playing badly against Hughes. Like they figure it out and they lock and the defense plays well, but you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. Like you saw, they fell behind against Carolina. They fell behind against Virginia. They fell behind against QC, and then they come back. Like, they're falling behind. You're putting yourself in a hole too often in these games. I don't think you want to do that for a team that I think is this a Final Four team? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's hard to say if anyone's a Final Four team right now. I think this is a team that feels like if it's going to have success, it's going to be through better than the sum of its parts. And if you want to do that, I think you don't want to fall behind, keep doing this fall behind thing. So I think they need to kind of figure out more of a change in that defensive strategy overall. I still think if you get through this Navy game in Annapolis, you get, obviously, I mean, what's Navy's face-off situation? If that's still difficult, then you get through that win. I think you're still you're in pretty decent shape. So last year they lost that one, so they had 3 losses in non-con. Then they went on to go 5-0 in Big Ten play. So I think that would be an improvement in some ways. I think they'll be okay. I think they're still in good shape, but uncertain, I think, is fair. Got 3 more: Ohio State, Harvard, Penn. Ohio State, I think, good, for definitely. And I think Ohio State are feeling, growth, kind of, mature. Like they feel. It feels different. The vibes feel different with this Ohio State team. Ohio State, aside from that 2023 season, where they brought in a lot of different pieces and personalities from the portal, and it just all kind of blew up. Like, that season went bad. That was a rough year. It's just the chemistry in the locker room did not seem to mix well. I don't think it didn't seem to mix on the field. I don't think that in terms of, look, sometimes you hit it right in the portal. This year it has. It really seems to, like, they've brought in a lot of different guys in the portal on offense, and it's really helped them on the field. It seems like, the guys have really bought into what they're doing. Nick Myers, like what he's trying to create offensively. It seems like it's really worked out. They've really got the right piece together. Sometimes you bring it in and it just doesn't work. We've seen that. Like, it's a tough balancing act. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. I don't think it worked at all that year. That team that team outside of Columbus, that team had nothing really. They got blown out. Defensively, they were really bad. And that was the thing, is Ohio State teams, you know what Ohio State teams are. They're going to be hard-nosed. They're going to be physical. They're going to be tough to play against. They're going to play a very particular style and brand of lacrosse. They're going to really slow pace. They'll play long possessions on their own end of the field, make you really earn, the shots that you're going to take. They're going to make you fight for good looks. And then the other end, it's going to be, they have a lot of athletic, good dodgers, guys who can win one-on-one matchups. They might be a little lower on the skill end of things. So a lot of the possessions are usually guys dodging, trying to find, space and room to shoot. But it's kind of, manufacturing. How do we get to 11, 12 goals? But there's an identity there of what an Ohio State team looks like. Last year we saw it. That looked like an Ohio State team. It was on the lower end of a good Ohio State team. Great defense, offense struggled. Lost to 1-goal games. Decent team. Wrong side of the top 20, wrong side of the NCAA tournament bubble. It looked like an Ohio State team. 2022, good end of the bubble, good end of the top 20. Defense was actually in some ways that year also kind of not quite with good respect, but they won a lot of face-offs. Offense was solid that year, and they made the NCAA tournament field. So, this is, you have an idea of what you expect when you are watching Ohio State. There's just it's certain kind of feeling. Yeah, I think that's the thing from 2021 to 23. I think that was sort of the weirdest thing about them. I think where some of the questions about Myers kind of popped up was like the defense was like they were in defense efficiency. They were 48th, 29th, and 49th from 2021 to 2023. Even 21 is a bit difficult because they all Big Ten schedule, things like that. They were actually very good offensively in 2022. They ranked 7th. Jack Myers, but like before then, 13th, 2020, 36th, 2019, 14th, 11th. Face-off play always usually strength that team. Nasium before that, Withers, all those guys. Offense, 26th, 24th, 10th, 52nd. They dropped below 2018 after all those guys left at the championship run. 29th, 16th. Last year, 41st. Really struggled. But if you give them an offense in the mix, it's like Ohio State is going to be in a certain level 10% better. They'll probably fight for the NCAA tournament. 10% worse, probably on the wrong side of it. 2013 was the year, 2023 rather, was the year where it really seemed to fall apart. But this year, they've got it working again. And again, the stat profile so far looks like a Ohio State team in the mix. 22nd in offense efficiency, 3rd in defensive efficiency, 25th face-off, 9th save percentage. And that's a mix that can play. But just they're playing, they've got their defense is we saw it. I mean, like last year, and they've continued on with that. They seem to be. I like they're playing better. In their two, what I like is that in their two toughest games, their turnover margin, Virginia and Notre Dame, their lowest turnover game of the season was against Virginia, and their third lowest turnover margin or turnover percentage game was against Notre Dame. Protecting the ball in those two games pivotal, like to what they're trying to do. Possession margin was really strong against Notre Dame. Like they won a lot of faceoffs. They cleared the ball really well against. I think they might have blown one clear. So there seems to be like they've embraced their identity. Again, checked off like a real serious big time win. I think now what we need to see is you need to back it up. You need to go out to Denver and you need to get that W. And if you do, they're in a great position in going into Big Ten play. I mean, the loss to Utah would hurt them. Like it's going to show up. It's like it might, even if they take care of business Big Ten play, like it's going to hurt you at some point. Like you'll show up somewhere, maybe in your seed, maybe a home game, not home game, whatever it might be. But if you go on and you beat Virginia and you beat Notre Dame and you beat Denver, you have checked off the boxes for yourself in non-conference play. And you're going to be a top 10 team going into Big Ten play. You will have shown active growth in like team you are. You've got a serious two road victories in a row, big time road victories. That's been a question of your team the last couple of years. So, like, I think the vibes are positive. Like, you've already cleared one hurdle. You need to clear another now. If you lose, then it's not the end of the world, but it opens questions again about you. So, like, that was the thing we kind of talked about, after they beat Virginia, it kind of put them back on the board. And then it was like, can you beat Notre Dame and get yourself really back in the business end? Now, can you beat Ohio State? Can you beat Denver and really just to like cement yourself in the mix and in the conversation, certainly in the Big Ten. Harvard, I think the vibes are, they're fantastic right now. It looks like Providence kind of pulling us into 8-6. Interesting. That's what we talk about Duke. They're kind of, they kind of get in these lulls. Some of these games kind of, get a little close. The fighting Bobby Benson's hanging around in that game. Koskinen, 8-6. Interesting game. Harvard, I think the Fives, they feel great. Shout out Jerry Byrne. Always kind of interacting with us on Twitter sometimes. They feel that team seems like they're having a lot of fun. They're in the top 10 of our poll. So and like on offense, it feels like the Harlem Globetrotters sometimes. Defensively, I do think I need to see a little more. I just need to see a little more different. They did show it against Michigan. I'll give them this. The Michigan game, that second half that game slowed down. That game required stops, and they got them. And so I will give them that. Like that game required a different test and different mettle of the Crimson, and we did see some of it. You need more of it. But overall, I do think that the vibes they're strong right now. It needs, you got to keep it up. Got to keep this push going. I think you just need to see more layers to this team is what I would say. How far can you go? I think the offense in that league is what will allow them to be the closest challenger to Cornell and Princeton for me. But you do need to see a little more, is what I would say. But like overall, look, they beat Cuse in the Dome, a huge win. Backed it up, beat Michigan at home. Now they're entering Ivy League play in a really good position. And you start with Yale. If you beat that one, man, they feeling that's another thing. Like that is where Yale's a tough opponent. They're coming off kind of feeling maybe re-galvanized for being Denver. On the record sheet, losing to Yale this year might hurt you, but it's Yale, and so it's a tough game. But it would, on the record sheet, it might not say on the record sheet, it's going to say you need to beat Yale. But it would really mean something if they can get this win over Yale. If they can follow up these most recent wins they've had, and now, go out there and get that victory to start Ivy League play, handle the increasing attention around them. A Yale team that's going to be desperate. Every game for Yale in Ivy League play is going to be like an Ivy League championship in some ways. Because again, I mean, their mind obviously for Yale, the mindset's got to be Ivy League tournament or bust. But if you want to give yourself any other option, it's got to be we got to win every game. So, but I would say Harvard are great. For Penn, I'm going to say lethargic. I won't say bad, but lacking juice. I just don't. Mike Murphy coming to the season, I went back and read the USA Lax magazine article. He kind of acknowledged that this was a team that had a certain identity of their defense specifically or goalie play. But he mentioned that, like, 10 years ago, maybe you could win a national championship with just your defense. Now you needed to win with your offense, and that they had been too one-dimensional. And now I come out and see this team so far, and you look at them offensively, and just one-dimensional is exactly how you would describe Penn so far. They're 38th in adjusted offensive efficiency so far this year. Adjusted shooting percentage, 23rd. Adjusted turnover percentage, 48th. If you go with unadjusted numbers, it's kind of the raw numbers. That makes it even worse. They're 52nd just in raw offensive efficiency, scoring only a little over a quarter of their possessions. Their raw shooting percentage, they're only shooting just under 28%, 46, and they're turning it over on 36% of their possessions, which is 62nd in the country. The only teams worse, they're turning it over on a higher percent of their possessions than Penn are Canisius, Quinnipiac, Mount, Mercyhurst, Merrimack, Detroit, NGIT, Lemoyne, Mercer, Bellarmine, Iona, Cleveland State, UMBC, Vermont, and Hampton. So there is no Big East team, no ACC, no Big Ten team that is turning it over and not even a Patriot League team that's turning it over at a higher clip than Penn is. Lethargic. Watching them play offense is an eyesore. And that's why in terms of like my top 20, I just can't rank. Like offensively, it's gotten worse than it's been the last couple of years. And I thought like some of the transfers they brought in, some of the guys brought from high school, I thought it would get a little bit better. And with that defense, I thought that'd be a good mix. But so far, it's not the case. I mean, they got up on Villanova pretty big early on, and then Villanova just got back in the game because Penn could not stretch that lead offensively. Look, they're never out of it, with I mean, that back end of that schedule is crazy. Cornell, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Notre Dame. Like, they kind of got a bit more of a lighter schedule coming up. I mean, they got 3 home games, Brown, St. Joe's, Dartmouth. I don't think those games are easy necessarily, but I think you definitely need to start 2-0 in Ivy League play with Brown and Dartmouth like that. I mean, that's the thing is like, it's a bit of a lighter schedule. I don't think those games are easy. You have to start 2-0 because you're at Cornell, you're Yale at home. Yale's offense, I think, is going to score goals. And with Penn, the thing with them is always like, can you play like a bit of a curveball and play? I don't think their offense is in a position right now to help with that, with the way it's going. I don't see it. The Duke game, they held Duke to 11 goals. And also, they're not winning faceoffs either. Like Duke had like one big explosion, but honestly, you're remembering, it's like they held after 11 goals ain't, that's still enough to feel okay about. And Penn, they're 72nd in faceoffs. I mean, my gosh. This is a 72nd in raw. So they're winning raw numbers. They're winning below 40% of their faceoffs, and they're shooting 28%. I mean, this is how you get this is ghastly. It's bad with the mix they're putting out there right now. I don't see any way in Ivy League play what they're putting out. The thing in Ivy League play is it's not a great face-off league, but against like Yale, Machado Rodriguez, against Harvard, not a great face-off team. Could you maybe get into a game or like face don't matter? You could slow it down, I guess. But I don't think that offense is in a position where you can punish. It doesn't feel like you're in a position where you can punish a team. Like we saw Michigan, a team that's struggling offensively. Harvard was able to hold up. So this offense where it's at right now, I just don't see. Maybe it can get better, but it needs to get a lot better. I think, this is a bad mix right now with, where they are, where they're at. It's troublesome vibe I'm getting, Mark. Troublesome, really. It's really how I would put it. Sure. Duke looks like they're stretching it back out to 11-6. Okay. All right, let's get into some of these games. So we're going to start with a couple of these games we kind of already talked about. We got 5 games on the docket. Maybe some of these will change around for the pick'em. Look, solo show means I get to pick the pick'em slate for this week. The 5 games we're kind of looking at. We've got Yale at Harvard and Ohio State at Denver. Things I'm kind of looking at here with Yale and Harvard. The Yale team that played Denver has a chance in this game. If we get that Yale team, I think they 100% have a chance in this game. That's the Yale team that you want to see. That was, just night and day from every other Yale game this season. Offensive efficiency 35.3%, adjusted defensive efficiency down at 25%. Machado Rodriguez completely dominated Denver on faceoffs. Denver's obviously very, very much struggled with faceoffs this year. It's not a strength for Harvard either, though. Possession margin for them in that game was plus 19. Plus 19 possession margin. It just caved Denver in. That's what you want to see. Yale got 11 saves in that game, just north of 50%, but Hugh Connor was on it early. Offense really got after it early on for Yale. Leo Johnson came out, had 3 goals and 2 assists. You like seeing him contributing early, but then it just having a big game. But a host 10 guys scored goals. Peter Moynihan had 2 assists as well. 4 guys had 2 goals: Johnson, Brad Sharp, Max Krevsky, Cole Cashian. But that's kind of like what you like to see. Johnson's the main guy. He has his big game coming off, come back from the injury. They need Yale's offenses are led by their ex-attackman. Goes back to Morrill. Then it was Brandow. Even before that, going back, Ben Reeves, obviously, even going back to like Conrad Oberbeck and those guys. Like the Yale offense are, they are led by their ex-attackman. They need the head initiator from behind the cage. That's how that offense functions. Then that attention sets up the midfielders who can dodge with their speed. That's how their offense runs. So they need Johnson to have be back at his best, and then get your just kind of host of Dodgers that they have kind of come through the midfield. The concerns for Yale is the defense overall. Can we get more of the defense that played against Denver? The defense overall is 44th in adjusted defense, 58th unadjusted. Harvard's been probably the best offense in the country so far. They're going to need a great game from Mac Rodriguez. I like Graham Stevens in net for Harvard. I think he makes a lot of big saves. So pace in this game is interesting too. Like we talk about, like Harvard being able to get some stops late in that game, win at a slower pace. For Yale, that's the thing. Yale was like in past years, Yale was always even when Yale in those championship years, they had TD 2018, 2019, even though they're such a dynamic, dominant offense, they still had that ability to play at a slower pace. Can Yale do that here? I don't know. But that's kind of what I'm, looking at. If the Yale team that played Denver, I think is in this game. And I think that makes it a really, really interesting matchup. Anything else than that, I don't know if they have enough. that defense. I feel like Harvard's offense, and Yale they proved showed a lot against Denver. Denver, though, also that the whole goal, and we'll talk about this with Ohio State. The goalie situation at Denver, kind of a bit of a mess. I think that Harvard's face-off is just a bit better than Denver. But pardon me 1 second. I think I might have to sneeze. And we're good. All right. Things that happen when you have a solo show. But I have a feeling this will be close. I think we're going to get some goals. I think Yale is getting back. I think we're getting to see a bit of the better Yale team close to Yale team that we expected. I also just get a sense that maybe this is a step up in competition for Yale as well. They've had their last three. They opened with Nova on the road, but then they played 3 straight home games. Now they're going on the road themselves to Harvard. They've been battle tests with Army and Penn State, but Denver, I think this is a big step up from Denver to Harvard. And Yale hasn't really been they kind of had the close games Nova, but if it's a close game, Harvard is a bit battle test in that regard. So I do think this will be a close game. I think Yale is on the track back. Does that mean it's all the way back to NCAA tournament or anything like that? I don't know. But I think it should be a good game. This will be at Jordan Field, 1 p.m. on ESPN+. All right, Ohio State, Denver. Again, this is 2 p.m. Out in the Rockies. So this one will be on, what is it? I forget what they call it now. We subscribe to it for the Denver Hopkins game. Midco. There we go. Midco Sports. Trap game, perhaps. Ohio State, get this win if you're Ohio State. Really get this win. It's always difficult going out to Denver. They'll have a good crowd as always. Home field advantage. If you're Denver, you want this. If you're Ohio State, you want this win. Back up, get another win. Back up the Notre Dame performance. Get a W. For Denver, I just wonder if their specialty areas are just kind of too weak. The goalie situation there is weird. Grayson Manning took over in the Utah game because Cleveland wasn't seeing the ball with the snow, and he played great. Problem is, then they kind of seemed to go with Manning against Cornell and Yale, and he was bad. And Cleveland played very well. And it feels like they just reacted to that game where Cleveland just didn't see in the snow and really went with Manning. But Cleveland's been back and playing better lately. And they've kind of put themselves in this position of, this weird 2-goalie kind of conundrum and situation that I just don't know that they needed to be in, or it's a weird kind of spot. Cleveland came in relief, saved 6% against off the bench against Yale, but Manning was great against Utah, and he played well against Marist, but he only had 1 save on 6 shots against Cornell and 2 saves on 7 shots against Yale. So his numbers overall, 61%, but it's that kind of snow game and then game against Marist. I don't know. And Cleveland, 51%. I don't know. He was the guy who took you to the Final Four last year. Either way, I feel like you just need to pick a guy. I don't know. 2 goalie situations, that really feels like ultimately in some case, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have 1. I think you just need to ride with a guy. I don't think it's helping. It's especially not helping considering the face-off situation they have, where you're 59th in adjusted face-off efficiency. You need stability somewhere. You're not getting the ball, and then you're not having stability in the net. You have no way of stabilizing your possessions. You have no way. How do you steal a game? If you're Denver, we talk about like the ways you can steal a game. You need to win. You need to win battle to face off extra. You need to get a great game for your goalie. You need to shoot the ball great. Well, how do you do that at all? If you have an unstable goalie situation, and you have what you do in it, and then offensively, they're shooting 30%, 32nd in the country. So it obviously you have to account for on the road. You have to account for all those things. Denver, the home environment, Ohio State. How do you handle success? But I just don't know. We talk about the ifs here. It feels like a lot of ifs for Denver. I don't see a lot of Denver right now in terms of pulling an upset. Ohio State offense is playing well, 22nd just off efficiency. Again, I mentioned like there's 2 games against Virginia and Notre Dame. 2 of the last 3 games below 30% turnover rate. You need to keep that again here. Play a good, smart road game. Keep the turnovers low. Clear the ball well, just like you did against Notre Dame. Shoot the ball well. Don't give Denver a route into this game. They're not winning faceoffs well at all. They have the goalie issue we're talking about, and they're not shooting well themselves. Don't give them possessions. Don't give them a route into it. Do your thing. Play great defense. Find your way to score your 10, 11 goals. Win your faceoffs, and get out of there with a 10-7 Ohio State victory. Play your brand. Play your lacrosse. If you do that, they'll be fine. But if you start making mistakes, you start turning the ball over, then you're going to give them confidence. And it's a team that's bereft of confidence at this point in time. All right, Richmond-Duke. Again, Duke's stat profile looks really good. Offensively, they're 6th in raw offensive efficiency. Shooting the ball, they rank 3rd in terms of shooting percentage and shots that go on cage. They're 3rd. Turning the ball over, turnover rate, they're 4th. Maybe the only thing you can maybe hold against them is that they just don't get a lot of shots on cage. They're 44th in that regard. But it all looks very good as far as these sort of stats would suggest. It's more of the eye test that kind of, as we've seen, the Michigan game. Long stretch without a goal. Now, granted, Michigan, good defense. We did see Harvard scoring them, though. And that's the thing. It's like, all right, Duke kind of holding up sort of similar here to Harvard, adjusted offense efficiency, but Harvard's offense played a lot better against Michigan than the Dukes did. Princeton game, they played great offense for sure. But they did have that long kind of scoring drought in there. Their defense was great in that Michigan game, though. Defense was less good against Princeton, but that was an offensive game. It happens. They can have these sort of lapses, offensively. Richmond looks like a really well-solid team. They're 13th in offense, top 10 defense. For Richmond, a big key, Jared Chenoy finally back at the faceoff dot. That did seem to kind of finally catch up with them against Cornell. Did not win enough faceoffs in that game. Really possession margin, they were -7 in possessions, and it just seemed to come back to bite them as Cornell just clawed their way back in that game. I think in some ways this game is about Richmond. Look, for Richmond, you beat Virginia on the road, and we talk about Richmond always looking for a big statement W, and you got that one. Then you had Cornell come to your house, and you came out there and you punched them in the face, but you couldn't close the show. And that's kind of been an issue with Cornell in some of these late game situations of being unable to close the door, get W. They had Maryland last year, double overtime, chance to close it out, couldn't do it. There's been other games of note where they've had chances to close it out. I haven't done it. This would be a big, big victory if they could clear the ACC in terms with Virginia and Duke. Two teams who folks might think maybe be 4 and 5 in the ACC. That'd be pretty darn significant for Richmond. And again, it's all about like, can your growth as a program, like in these close games against, even going back to that tournament game they had against Penn a couple years ago, like they should have won that game. They had that game there. It's one thing to kind of catch a team maybe off guard, get up a little bit, win by 3 or 4. Can you in a close game make the plays and win? So I think that is significant for Richmond. But to me, I think in some ways this game is more about Duke. Who is this Duke team? Is this Duke team a bona fide top 10 squad? Or are they even maybe a top 5 team? If they beat Richmond and their offense, this is a really strong Richmond team defensively. Like they held Cornell to 32% offensive. See, Cornell turned the ball over on 37% of their possessions. Cornell doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Cornell shot 32% in that game. If you're looking at Cornell's games this year, the Richmond in terms of offensive, their lowest game in raw offensive efficiency was against Richmond. Their highest turnover rate of the year was against Richmond. So like this Richmond defense can play. If Duke can go out there against Richmond offensively and put up numbers that match what their stats are kind of showing, then we're going to be like, all right, man, Duke's right in there in the ACC. If it's more like what we saw against Michigan, or if it's more like the first half against Penn, I think we're going to be, and then even if they win, if they win, look, it's win, get a win. Get yourself, just rack up W's, get yourself, kind of try and put yourself in a good position going to ACC play. I think we're kind of still going to be left kind of feeling like, where are they at in the ACC? I'm not sure we know. I think it's going to be kind of uncertainty that the goalie playing this game feels, Vigu was very strong against Virginia. Jameson, again, kind of like an uncertainty question. Like I thought he was playing really strong for them, but he started to, have to struggle a bit. They're below 50%. Richmond feels much stronger in the specialty areas than they did earlier, the year with Chenoy back. Duke style on the faceoffs. And then again, that kind of gets like for Duke can Jameson get back to the guy we saw last year? Can he play his best ball? He plays his best ball. All right, strong Duke, strong in net. You don't want to feel like in ACC. You obviously got Notre Dame with Rich Iardelli. North Carolina with Gianni Ficcaro. That's kind of where you want to be with goalie. You don't want to be like Cuse, McCool. Seems like maybe bounce back from the goal issues. But you don't want to be down there with Virginia. That's kind of seems like what's in terms of like divinely ACC. Teams with goalie troubles might be more towards the bottom. Teams that have their offense definitely figured out towards the top. That's where with Duke, I think we start to find more out after this game. And I think this game does sort of put these two teams in tiers. If Richmond wins this game, I think they'll beat Virginia, but they beat Duke. They lost that game to Cornell, but it's by a goal. They lost to Maryland early in the year, and you can kind of just look, that was a struggle. They didn't have Chenoy. They got their face-off man back. And I think they're knocking on the door of the top 10. They'll have Georgetown after. And with Duke, I don't think, though, they're still going to be like they'll still be a good team. I don't think they're not a good team, but there will be kind of feeling, is there a lot there? So there's not a lot of meat on that bone, it'll feel like, as they get into ACC play. And it'll be uncertain. I'm just not sure with this game. I think Duke is. I'm going to look for kind of Matt Christmas. He's a guy I'm going to look for. Can we talk about I think Duke try and push. Some maybe transition. The way that not over aggressive, kind of the way Virginia did. Turnover, but try and find early offense success there. Half court defense for Duke against Richmond. I do think they should have some success in. Duke shorties, that's the question. Richmond really had success dodging against the Cornell shorties early on, and then finding, forcing them into the slides to find shots from up top. Richmond, I don't think is going to be trying to dodge against Duke's poles, which would be smart. How Duke shorties hold up? That'd be interesting. I think there might be some room for attack there. I think it's going to be a really good game. So I'm excited for this one. Duke coming off of midweek game. I think we learned a lot about both. But I think we learned about both teams. I think it just tells us more about where Duke is kind of located in the mix. All right, Maryland, Virginia. We've heard me talk plenty about this game over the years. How much I love this game. It's the 99th edition of Maryland, Virginia. Klockner Field, 4 p.m. Eastern, ACC Network. I wish it was a night game. I think these teams need to play a night game at Klockner sometime. Maybe next year, at least, for the 100th edition, they could play a night game at Maryland Stadium. I think that'd be awesome. I think it rocks that this game has been back on the docket as a staple, non-con game. The rivalries been renewed. It's one of the great classic games in lacrosse. It's not Maryland Hopkins. It's not Cuse Hopkins. Shout out Ryan. It's maybe Virginia Cuse. I think it's kind of in the mix with that one. I think those two games kind of go up and down, kind of in importance, based on who's kind of winning at that point in time. But yeah, kind of in terms of the I think it's a top 5 out of conference kind of. Or, I mean, it was a conference rival for a time. Now it's out of conference. But it's not Army Navy. Other than that, it matters, and I think it's a game. It's similar to Syracuse and Virginia. I think it's a game that matters just because I don't think the border state element matters as much. I think what makes it great is Maryland and Hopkins has there's the kind of some of the cultural elements of it. Hopkins is a private school, Maryland's public school. And some of this stuff, for the record, is dissipated. It's this stuff meant more like 20 years ago, or even longer than that. And in-state, that real kind of in-state dynamic. Maryland, Virginia is just it's lacrosse. It's truly the results. It's the fan bases and just how that built up over a prolonged period of time. Syracuse, Virginia is somewhere that kind of that regard. And really, I think you feel that in the modern rivalry with 2 coaches, Tillman and Lars Tiffany. Virginia beating Maryland in that 2019 game, and how that lingered for the Maryland fan base, of course. And, that crazy championship game in 2021. That was one of the most heated. Not a bad way, just the emotions that everyone poured into it. That 2021 championship. The carried over 22, you clearly tell that was Maryland players kept that with them. It didn't get talked about, I think, as much, but that clearly for the Maryland players, that one lingered in the memory for a long, really all season. I remember the story like Jesse Bernhardt keeping the score of the championship game in the Maryland players' locker rooms for like the entire year. Then I was at the 22 game in Audi Field, which Maryland won, the number 1 versus number 2. Then they beat them in the quarterfinals. The game played last time. This was at Clockner Field. Unbelievable game. Virginia was number 1. Went to overtime. The crowd was just unbelievable. They were all up on the hill. I mean, you could hear the fans make the noise, chirping the Maryland players. It was just, that was me and Safe, I think, went to the podcast like right after. Brian Rupel had his the so far shining moment of his college career with that unbelievable save in OT. On just a class thing. Last year they met in the Final Four. Virginia won the regular season. They met again in the Final Four. 2 kind of more low-key games. Just weren't super close games either direction. And this is the most, I would say, low-stakes game that these two teams have played in, gosh, over a decade. I mean, well, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, I would say yes, or maybe not actually, because I think you could argue the last year, the regular season game is actually more low stakes than this, because for Virginia, you could argue it's actually higher stakes because they kind of need a big out of conference win. Virginia is still searching for that big signature win. And so in actually some ways, even though last year, I think both teams were in the top 10, this game matters for Virginia more than last year's game did. More than last year's game mattered for Maryland. It was bigger in the sense of the two teams are more on the equal playing fields. It matters more. Interesting kind of thing. Think of it from that perspective. So I think in the terms of the hype behind it, it's probably the most least talked about since the last game they played, for the ACC 2014 or maybe even 2013. It kind of reminds actually 2013. Maryland was, I think, number 2 when they went to Clockner. That was the Virginia team that missed the tournament. I don't know if they were ranked in the poll that week. I remember that one. But look, I think when this game faces off, I think it's going to feel like Maryland. It's going to feel like Maryland, Virginia. I expect. Going to take a look at the forecast here. Saturday looks like overcast, but could reach a high of 67 right about 5 o'clock or so. At Clockman, what's the feels like? We've got 63. So should be a nice day. I think a nice day. Saturday evening. At Clockman, I think we're gonna have a great crowd. I expect Virginia. You're gonna get a desperate Virginia team in this game. And I think you saw that to a degree for Virginia against Hopkins, the way they came out. I think you're going to get even more of that, the best Virginia that you've seen this season. Up to this point, I think we're going to get the best Virginia you've seen so far is what we're going to see. Is that enough? Virginia is interesting. I think they've stabilized things to a degree. I think the question for the Cavs is, where is their path to success in this game? What is Virginia great at in 2025? I think is the question you're kind of trying to ask. Offensively, they've had some games. You kind of look at their best game was against High Point. They played really well against Hopkins in that first half. Hopkins creating offense for them. kind of sliding to some of their midfielders, and that allowed the attack to get more space. Truett Sunderland, McCabe Millen had 7 goals. Like this attack unit has come together really well, especially Truett Sunderland, and I think Colsey. But is that attack unit going to have success against Maryland Poles? Like Millen on Will Schaller? I don't know. Truett Sunderland on maybe, he's a more kind of quicker guy, kind of lankier on a kind of a bigger body like Canfield or Burlace. Granted, there's a big size disparity there, and Sunderland isn't overly quick. So, and Sunderland's success has been more off ball. So maybe that's a match. I don't know. I don't know if there's a success. And then for Virginia, I think worry that you have, or I guess where I'm I just wonder where still with the offense, which kind of last week against Towson didn't set the world on fire. They had kind of one explosion in the third quarters. The midfield, Griffin Schutz, 8 goals in 6 games. Thomas Menke did have a nice game against Towson. Scored a hat trick, but before that, he had 3 goals in 5 games. Jack Walsh, 6 goals in 6 games. So that the UVA first midfield has combined for 20 goals in 6 games. And after that, their next leading scorer is Ben Ware. So they're not getting anything from any second midfield. Schutz has had some good games against Maryland in the past, but Kenny probably going to go against like Jack McDonald from Maryland, AJ Larkin, the Maryland's 2 really strong long pole units. That's what it's going to have to be. And then it's for UVA, can Walsh or Menke dodge Maryland shorty? I don't know if the matchups are there for UVA on the offensive side of the ball. Can UVA push transition? Where can he have a big game? Maryland's been great in transition. I think it's got to be a case of UVA's got to get this game rattled. Like they got to get Maryland making mistakes, and it's got to be the best game they've had in transitional year. Like Ben Ware has to be. Ben Ware's got to be an animal. I mean, he's got to have a goal to couple assists. Like he's really got to turn this game on its head in the middle of the field. It's got to be the most controlled aggression the UVA has in the middle of the field all year. It can't be the UVA ride has to be the best we've seen all year. Maryland can't kind of easily clear through the UVA ride the way we've seen other teams do it. They have to, really has to be on them and force Maryland to multiple failed clears to give themselves extra possessions that they can then score on off of that, or quick turnover into goals like that. That's got to be it for UVA. It's got to be control, aggression and quickly in transition, but that isn't this kind of wildness that we saw early in the year. And then it's got to be the ride has to work. It's all got to work for UVA. And I think we'll see some of it work. The question is, it's really got to work, because otherwise, offensively against this Maryland defense, I just don't know if I see it. And then defensively, I just don't know if Maryland's going to dodge. We saw this in the Final Four game last year. Maryland didn't even really try to dodge UVA's balls. And there wasn't the concern for them. It was all about going after the shorties. And UVA feels maybe kind of thinner shorty now than they were a year ago. It's still got Noah Chismar, who's fantastic. But Maryland, I really like the way their offense has started to grow. Versatility sometimes can be crutch isn't the right word, but it can hurt you a bit. It kind of just a jack of all trades, master of none type deal. And Maryland, I think at times in the last couple seasons, have had this kind of issue of or like their midfielders have been like converted attackmen. And this whole positionless sort of thing, where they have like a bunch of like former attackmen on the field, and so like it's in a sense it's versatile, but the problem is you don't have enough guys who have a specific skill set they can do. Really, they just don't. Yes, they're maybe former attackmen, but what do they do well? How can they really hurt the defense? It's like, well, no. Well, in that case, it doesn't matter if you're versatile. Doesn't matter. Do you really provide enough options? No. Now, I think really has an optionality and a versatility in their attack, because the guys they do have out there really can hurt the defense. I think you really saw it. You started seeing it against Delaware. I thought it was one of the best games Maryland played offensively in a long time. The win by 11 goals was their biggest margin of victory in like 2 years. But it was their in terms of raw offensive efficiency and adjusted offensive efficiency was their best of the season. In terms of turnover rate, it was their lowest of the season. In terms of shooting percentages, 30.4%. And that was the thing. Like, even they didn't shoot the ball well. Ellington for Delaware had a great game, and they still put up big time numbers. Maryland did. A goal assists on 11 of their 14 goals. Only turned over 6 times. This was a game, where it really looked like a Maryland offense. The way that the ball was just moving so quickly, everyone seemed, it was just one, coordinated pass. The way they were using picks from every angle, picks on the perimeter. And as soon as they got the pick, the ball was going back, immediately to the guy, to set the pick to get a shot or to move it along to the next guy who's then, drawing the adjacent slide. It was really working. But to get back to the versatility point, they've got in Matthew Keegan and Bryce Ford 2 former attackmen, but guys who had the ball in their stick at their former spots at Binghamton and Fairfield. And this is forcing defenses are really they're respecting the fact that these are guys, when they have the ball in their stick, they can pat their threats to pass because they were former ex-attackmen. They were guys who had, the offense built around them in the former spots. But the big thing is, even though they're former attackmen who shot the ball really well. And they're playing midfield now for Maryland. And they are threats to shoot the ball from the outside. We talk about so much, like Maryland didn't have a real kind of stretch shooting ability. Offense is just so packed in the last couple of years. There's games you go back and watch them. I mean, it's incredible like how packed in defenses played them, and like packed into like 10 yards, and still sometimes Maryland wouldn't shoot the ball. But you have Matthew Keegan, he's shooting 36%. Bryce Ford shooting 29%. But he's had some strong games. Them shot 2 of 6 against Q, shot 2 of 4. Here against Delaware, 2 of 5 against Richmond. So he's had some good games for them. And with 9 goals, he's 5th on the team. After Spanos, Kelly, Urksa, and Keegan. Like he can stretch it. Like, you have to respect his shooting ability. Even if maybe the percentage is a little bit lower, he's got the outside shot that they just didn't necessarily have with guys in the last couple of years. So this means the opponents have to go out to them. And then you still got to respect Spanos down low. You still got to respect Urksa down low. And so they're really pressuring teams from all areas now. Whereas before, teams just didn't feel like they had to do that to Maryland. And so it was packed in. So packed. You'd see them feed the crease and the ball get knocked down. You'd see these turnovers. And then now on the flip side, they're running a second midfield line that is true just dodging threats. It's Elijah Stovall, dodger, big time shot of Stovall. But he goes out there, he's a dodger. Jack Schultz, we've seen him really a dodger. I mean, that guy, his job is to go out there, go to the goal. Stovall, maybe we don't shoot, but Jack Schultz is dodger. We saw in that Notre Dame game. that guy is just there to dodge. Aiden can even dodge. And so, like, and they seem to really have the green light in a way that's different from most Maryland, groups in the past. Young Maryland, because, Stobaugh's a sophomore, Schultz is a freshman, true freshman, and Aiken's been around the program for a little bit, but, mostly just, played on, I think maybe played a little bit last year, but also or just on the sidelines. You really got to kind of earn your stripes in the Maryland offense. You got to know, like, don't press things, patient with the ball. This group seems to have the kind of, green light down to them. Like, you guys are out there to dodge. You guys are out there to press the defense. And that's different to what they've had. It's a second midfield group that's there to dodge, and you're seeing their success. Jack Schultz has 5 goals. Stobaugh had 2 goals and an assist against Delaware. He had a goal against Cuse. Schultz last 5 goals in his last 3 games. I think the offense I think is starting to percolate for this group in addition to the defense, which has been strong. Face-offs will be interesting. Maryland's face-off group has kind of slowed down a little bit. Granted, they played some strong face-off units. Delaware's a strong one. Notre Dame's strong. Virginia's a little more up and down. Virginia's going to need a great – Matt Noon seems to be great. I assume he'll start. It needs to be just awesome in the specialty areas. I expect it'll be a great best game for Virginia. And you do kind of wonder if Maryland, when does they're kind of due for like a drop in energy, feel like, just considering how stacked this kind of run of games has been for them. But is that going to be Virginia at Klockner? I don't know what the path for victory for Virginia is to a degree. So we'll see. I don't think this is going to be a blowout by any means. I think this will be a great game. All right, last one, the main event, the big one. Cornell and Princeton. Man, I'm still excited for this one, even after, Cornell's loss last week to Penn State. This is a great rivalry. Always produces fireworks, great games, great finishes. Last year, that crazy Princeton had the chance to win it, and then turned the ball over at the top of the perimeter. I think quotes from McAfee. Cornell goes down and scores game winner in the final seconds. 2023, Cornell won it also again, I think, with might have been 14-13 overtime victory at the Koff for the Big Red. In that one clinched them the Ivy League tournament or Ivy League regular season victory. Was 18-15 victory in like a shootout at class of 1952 in 2022. So Princeton has not beaten Cornell since, was it 2019 was another one. It was another 14-13 win. It was 2018. It was the game where George Bond shut down Jeff Teat. Remember that one? Yeah, George Bond announced himself on the scene in college lacrosse, and he shut down Jeff Teat. Other than that, it's been 4 in a row for Cornell over Princeton. And again, some classic games in there, overtime, late goal finishes. Cornell Busick kind of had Princeton's number in this one. Historically, there's kind of been a bit of a road history in this rivalry. Look, these are two offenses that are just like you expect goals. Obviously it's an Ivy League game. These are the two best teams in the Ivy. These are two offenses that are just phenomenal. They both were over 40% offensive efficiency on the year. The two things that astound me with these two teams, I mean, the turnover, like Princeton is turning it over on for the year so far. I mean, Princeton's had some games. Against North Carolina, they turned it over on less than 10% of their possessions. Against Maryland, it was less than 15%. Rutgers was one of their highest, 31%. So for like overall in the year, raw just turnover percentage less than 25%, adjusted 20%. Cornell very similarly, 25.8%, 26% adjusted turnover rate, 28% raw turnover rate. Like these teams protect the ball. Their spacing is so great. The way they move the ball, it's a joy to watch these two teams play offense. And Cornell is shooting the ball incredibly well. They're at 36% on the year. Princeton's a little lower at 30%. I think that could be maybe potentially something to watch for. On this game, it does feel like Princeton has to work a little bit for their shots at times. I think Cursed is sort of the element of kind of the game breaker, whereas Princeton, it's more of a, and not that Cornell's obviously got, but Princeton's kind of spread the wealth. Princeton, you just keep kind of looking for, does this face-off thing catch up with them at some point? Because they are at 34% for the season so far. I mean, winning face-offs. Adjusted, it's 42%. Because, I mean, they faced some great face-off units. But that's cost you a championship for sure, face-off play. Like, that's a real weakness. And Jack Casketen, can he, he took the penalty against, he cost, I don't think it was intentional. I don't want to put the blame on him really. It was just some kind of fortunate thing, but like his penalty was in some ways, cost Cornell against, but can he give faceoff wins to Cornell? Maryland body blowed Princeton. They were able to get faceoff wins, and they were able to attack that Princeton short defensive midfield again and again, and kind of drew him out, just kind of, it's sort of like just jab to the body, jab to the body, jab to the body, bang. Jab to the body, jab to the body, bang. Cornell is a more attack-driven team, Maryland, and Cornell is it's sort of blitzkrieg. They'll just get on you in a flurry. They did kind of do it to Penn State. We saw these kind of like 3 to 4 goal kind of blitzes. Can they do this against? Like, can they turn these big face-off? Can they get some face-off wins? Can they dominate the face-off dot? And if they can they turn that into a way to really sap the Princeton defensive midfield? Something that I want to watch. And I think especially because Princeton, I think, is the more physical, stronger team. I think Princeton's looked great in the middle of the field this year. They've done a great job of shutting off teams' transition game. I think Princeton, like in the Maryland game, Maryland's been a great transition offensive team this year. They didn't really have anything against Princeton. I think that's a real strength for the Tigers. So I do think this is probably going to be like a 6-on-6 offensive showcase. And that is where you kind of wonder if Princeton doesn't have the ball as much. How much does that come into play? Goalies for both these teams have been streaky. Croddick has largely been very good, but he had that Duke game, Wyatt Nust, for Cornell. Cornell on the flip side, can they defend the Princeton midfield? That's, to me, where I really want to continue to see Princeton's line of attack come from. I don't know if it's probably going to be, I assume, Brendan Staub on Coulter McAsee. And now the thing is, the way teams have been shutting down the Princeton's offense is that they've gone quick to slide to McAsee, and he hasn't had the rotation. The rotation hasn't been kind of quick enough, and that's kind of bogged down Princeton's offense a little bit. Cornell's Cornell's defense are sliding. I don't know. So we'll see on that. Can Princeton punish them or Cornell defense sliding a little bit? That's a different question. Do you trust Cornell's defense to slide? Is a question against the Princeton offense that's so great moving the ball. Always Jim Mitchell's offenses. But I want to see. We saw against Cornell's teams they're shorties. I don't that Cornell's defense. They're shorties. I don't like their stance, like the way they engage. They seem to give up too much space against Richmond. By the time they were starting their dodge, they had space immediately, and Cornell had to slide off of shooters, and boom, easy time room shots, and that seems like a problem against Princeton midfield. So that's a real kind of worry, I think, that you have in this game. I feel like there's the matchup side of things, or just kind of worries me more. Princeton offense to Cornell defense. The face-off element of it really worries me for Princeton in terms of having the ball and having to play that much defense against. This is really, I feel like I don't think they can get away with it. I feel like you're hitting up kind of something against Maryland. I feel like you're hitting your sort of ceiling of what you can get away with against the Cornell offense. And so overall, also I kind of wonder, with how this tough Princeton schedule: Penn State, Maryland, Duke, Carolina rivalry game against Rutgers. Possession margin overall, I just don't know if you can get away with that against this Cornell offense. Maybe this is where it kind of just entered. We talk about Maryland. Maybe do they hit a layoff? I don't expect Princeton to not to feel. I just wonder if your legs, I'm sure they're going to come ready for this one. This is a big game. They're going to come, but do your legs, all these games, you play 2 games in 3 days against Duke and Carolina, you played Rutgers, do your legs finally start to feel it a little bit against Princeton, or against Cornell, rather, at that point? But man, I can't wait to watch this. I do think we're gonna have a will of a game here. That's just what the history of this rivalry suggests. Hopefully, it brings us a crazy finish, kind of like we've been getting. So that would be a lot of fun. That would be super enticing. Cornell maybe a little more desperate. That element of it too, kind of coming off the loss at home. Princeton does have so the kind of the wins in the bank that you're kind of looking at in that regard. On the flip side, Cornell's been the team that's won, kind of dominated the Ivy League regular season play. Princeton's had to play catch up. It does feel like Princeton's a year in the Ivy League this year. I do think they're probably the best team, but maybe they're still a little bit of a climb they have to make. We'll see. All right, I'm gonna pick some of these games and we're gonna get out of here. We being me, and you guys listening. I can't believe I've done an hour and 45 minutes of this by myself. I yap. All right, Princeton and Cornell. This one is coming at you noon on ESPN Plus. I'm gonna go Cornell. I just think, I think the schedule maybe gets Princeton a bit here. I think the face-off play kind of worries me for Princeton, and also maybe Cornell's got their number a little bit. Richmond at Duke. I can't believe I'm going to do it again, but I am going to take. This is Duke at Richmond, which is also part of why. I can't believe I'm going to do it again. I'm going to talk myself into it, but I'm going to take Richmond. I'm totally going to regret this. I should not do this at all, but I don't know. I just kind of think Richmond gets Trinoli back. Maybe goalie advantage with Vigu compared to Jameson struggling. That Richmond defense, Duke's offense struggling a little bit. I'll take Richmond. Yale at Harvard. I'm tempted a little bit here with Yale, kind of improving a little bit how they've been playing, but I just don't know that defense can kind of hold up enough. So I'm going to take Harvard. Maryland to Virginia, I'm going to go Maryland. And I'm going to go Ohio State over Denver. Don't see a path for Denver areas. And Virginia, I think, will play their best game of the year. But I just think Maryland's too solid. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. I miss Safe. Should be back next week. I'm excited for the Power Hour. Me and Ryan should be at it Saturday. So make sure you tune in for that. We'll be there again. Yeah, probably around 6, probably around 7-ish. Is probably what I look for. But hey, do you know how you can know when it happens? Subscribe to us on YouTube. Put the notifications on, and then you will get alerts for when we go live. So make sure you do that. This video will be up on YouTube. Make sure you like it. Go like any other videos we've done. And if you're still doing it the old-fashioned way with podcast form, we appreciate that. Give us 5 stars, whatever it is on that end. But folks, I hope you enjoyed this one. You can find us at college_cross. That is where we're still at on X, the Everything app. And I hope you stay hydrated and pick up for president. We'll see you out there.